Hello and welcome to Eco Girl in a Modern World. My name is Shelly and my channel is dedicated to talking about ways to be more environmentally friendly in a modern context. This video I'm going to go ahead and keep really brief. I normally post it every 2 weeks on Sunday. I went ahead and I was really tired yesterday, so I decided to make Sunday a day of rest and to take a break. And it was very relaxing, but it actually got me thinking about today's topic, the time to just kind of think about what I wanted today's video to be about. And I'm going to talk about spring cleaning, but this year spring cleaning is a little bit different. It's hitting a little bit different. And I just wanted to talk about that and some of the experiences that I've had in the last week and the last couple of days have really contributed to kind of a new perspective of what it is to tidy up or to par down. And first off, I wanted to just say that I know it's been a couple weeks, and I didn't talk a whole lot about Earth Day, but that's just because I tend to try to make Earth Day every day. So it is one of those things where it isn't just one day of year that we try to be green. It really is every day. And if you watch this channel, I always talk about my goals. I maintain the green initiatives that I have always done. And then I've always strived to add to do some, just kind of do one more thing that limits the impact on the earth. So I'm always striving towards those goals. But this year in particular, it was interesting. First off, in the last couple weeks, it's gotten warm very quickly. I don't think we've completely skipped over spring, but we definitely had a rev up. There was a solid 7 days where it was 80 degrees out, and it was very unseasonably warm. It felt like, okay, are we going to have any cool weather, or are we going to go straight from winter into summer, which is very jarring. It's not normal, and you'll see in a minute that I'm going to be posting a few videos down below. I hear a lot of people talk about this, that it's freezing in the morning, it's hot by the afternoon, and it just seems like we're experiencing all of the seasons at once. And that is definitely not normal. That is most definitely global warming, and we do need to take it seriously. But one thing that I did notice, and this was something that was kind of funny, there's a tree in my parking lot that I was a little concerned about. It was looking kind of sickly, and I'm Googling symptoms of a dead tree because I thought it was dead. And they said that some of the symptoms of a dead tree is peeling bark and a lot of moss growing on it. And this tree had all of the symptoms of it. And what's weird is I like to park my car under it, and we've had a few storms bring in some winds, and I was really afraid that it might be a dead tree and that it be dropping branches or falling over on my car. But it did turn out that I was waiting for spring to kind of see if it would bloom up, and it did. It budded and it bloomed. So it is. I was joking. I think of that Billy Crystal line from A Princess Bride. I guess it was just mostly dead and not all dead. And actually, I watched a great video from Shelbizleee. And she had a great video that talked about how she converted her lawn. She got away from regular lawn seed and did a native growth of her lawn. And she actually had to put a sign out there that said, "This is a native growth lawn," because, as humans, we always want everything to look so aesthetically pleasing, for it to look pretty. And she even said at one point in that video that there's, sunflowers, there's a point where they look dead. They look terrible, but really they are alive. They're just kind of, that's just a stage of life. Nature is good at playing possum. You think it's decaying, but really it's just in a stage of regeneration. So a lot of times we're real quick to pick up the rake the leaves or pick up the branches, but really a lot of times you need to leave that kind of debris to act as the nutrients to go back into the next life cycle. So it's good. It's a great video to watch because she talked about that, and it's amazing how our habits, we always want everything to look so pristine, but really leaving the detritus biodegrade is really part of the cycle of life. So, don't, that might be one goal that you can have for this year for Earth Day, is to learn more about the way, the stages, and what you can do, even if it doesn't look as pretty as you think it's going to look, right? How to contribute more to a natural garden or a natural lawn. So that's a great video, though. I highly suggest you check it out. But another thing that I've been kind of watching, and again, I live very vicariously. One of the great things about watching YouTube is that not only do you learn how to do a lot of things, but you can kind of live vicariously through the creators. So all of the videos that I've been seeing lately have been not only spring fashion, which we'll talk about in 2 weeks. I promise the next video will be a fashion video for summer. But the other thing that I keep seeing people is spring cleaning, in particularly spring purging of wardrobes. And so again, I love watching these videos because I did do a spring cleaning, but even if I weren't, it's you kind of, instead of, we talk about on this channel all the time, you don't want to bring in a whole new wardrobe just to purge it. There's a dopamine hit that you get when you par down, like when you get rid of, when you clean everything to a point of minimalism. It feels really good because, it feels good to have space, to have no clutter. Clutter definitely is, in feng shui, clutter is an energy drainer. When you have a lot of things, you have to maintain a lot of things. So when you see it, when you trip over it, when it's taking up space, that is, that takes from your energy. So a lot of times, you get a really big dopamine hit when you just purge everything. But the other side of it is that a lot of times it kind of contributes to the cycle, because then you end up buying everything, buying more to replace what you got rid of. Either that, or you might have accidentally get rid of something that you regret later. So, but I sometimes, if it's been, actually, I've been pretty good, and it's been a couple years since I've really had a lot before. It's been a couple years since I've had to take stuff out of my wardrobe and donate it. It's been very minimal. It's probably been like 1 to 3 items, which is a really good average. But, even if I'm not purging, if you want to kind of get that dopamine hit without actually having to do it yourself, there's tons of wonderful videos on YouTube to talk about it. Now, one of the videos that I'm going to post down below is from Christina Mikas. I love her channel. She is a former, she's a recuperating minimalist. She tried minimalism for a while, but then she even admitted, I have too many clothes for me to be a real minimalist. And honestly, I think it's bad to be in either extreme. You don't want to be to the point where you've got too much, but then you don't want to be to the point where you have absolutely nothing. I think a happy medium is where we should always try to reside. The other thing is that I think you should be allowed to take up space. You should allow what you're passionate about to be what clutters up your house. So if if you're not a big clothes person, but you're a big arts and crafts person, have arts and crafts supplies. Let that be what takes up your space. But she has a great video that talks about how, and it's actually a great watch if you want to do what we were saying, which is just watch somebody do a purge. But I love her channel because she always has really good pointers on how to do that. How to be careful with what you're parting with, and and how to make decisions about it. But she has a great spring cleaning video that talks about things that are guaranteed to be kind of clutter, and she categorizes it really well. That is also the content creator who talks about when you buy things. She always says if it's if it's not a heck yes, it's a no. So she has those great pointers that talk about it. But it's funny. I was watching her channel, but I did end up doing a purge. I didn't. A lot of times you get inspired because you're watching the videos on YouTube, and then then you're just the more videos you watch, the more inclined you are to do it. It's just something about the organization. You see someone else do it, and it also helps get the wiggles out. It's springtime. You want to feel like you're being productive. But I did notice that I was accumulating a lot of books, and I am a book hoarder. I'm bad about it, and I finally decided, look, I'm not gonna. I have a storage unit, and I do not want to have to pay for a bigger storage unit. So what you got to do is you got to get honest about your books. And paring down on books is very similar to paring down on clothes. You kind of have to, and actually, it's actually kind of a Marie Kondo principle. And Christina Mikas says this with her clothes too. It's always good to take all of your books off the shelf, instead of just looking at the spines and saying, oh, this one goes, that one goes, this one goes. Marie Kondo really revolutionized the concept of take all of them off the shelf so you can see, so you can get a feel for the mass of it. How much of it do you have, right? And that's because that's an important part of the cleaning or the paring down process. And then her concept was, if you hold the book or if you flip through the book, does it spark joy? And what she means is, have you already read the book, and are you going to read the book again? Is it important to you? Is it something that you feel like that you would regret parting with? So similar, we talk about our rules with clothing. We talk about factors like, does the color look good on me? Does it fit well? How often have I worn it in the last 2 years? Those are kind of rules that I go to with my closet. It's kind of like the same thing with this, with paring down with books. It's like, I had to really go one by one and think, okay, have I really read through this entire book? Am I taking it off the shelf and really using it, or is it just taking up space? Is it, similar to clothes? Is it one of those things where it was a cheap book and I thought it was cool and I got it for like $2 and I've never used it since? So I got a good stack out of that, and I was very proud of myself. I got a chance to par down very, very well, and I did go online. It is true that unfortunately about 80% of only about 20% of donations to the thrift store actually get resold, and that's for books and clothing. But there's a lot of donation places, like book receptacles, like Better World Books or things like that you can give your books to. And I did go online, some of the nicer books that I had, I did go online and look at it and see, okay, how much are they reselling for? Would it be worth the time and energy for me to take pictures of it and post it and resell it myself? And that's something Christina Mikas says all the time too. She always tries to resell versus donate, because, we don't want to get into the wish cycling circle of things. Sometimes when we just think, oh, okay, we'll give it to the thrift store and it'll magically all get resold. And even if you have quality clothes, like I think my clothes are very quality, they would resell. Space is at a premium for everyone, and you don't want to run the risk of it just going into a landfill. So same thing with books. And it was really great. I got a chance to par down. Ironically, I parted with the Marie Kondo book. That was one of the books, and it's funny. I opened up to the page that talked about, does your book spark joy? And it's funny, I actually saw an interview with Marie Kondo where she even said she regretted donating half her books. So you can over-purge. You got to be careful with that. But I think I did a good purge so far. I always take it as a rule of thumb, about 2 to 3 days later, is there a book that that you gave away that you're immediately thinking, oh my God, why did I do that? I can't really, none of the book titles that I donated really came to mind. There was one coffee book, but I'm not really going to miss it. It would make someone else much happier for it to be resold. And I even donated some children's books as well. So it's like, that's always a good rule of thumb. So I did do my own little spring cleaning there. I did do some spring cleaning with paring down of my closet. And it had been a couple years. The Christina Mikas video is great for rules of thumb. My rule of thumb is I don't take the whole closet out, but I have a bin of winter clothes, and that bin of winter clothes all gets dumped on my bed. So it is kind of like the Marie Kondo, put it all in front of you. So I most definitely see the mass of it. The other thing is that the bin that I was keeping in, and I was having a hard time getting the lid to shut. So, and I refused to buy a bigger bin. I'm like, okay, how, let me really par down, let me comb through these clothes. You don't have to part with anything that you don't want to, but the moment that you can't get your winter bin to close, you really comb through. And what I like to ask is, I like to say, I switch out my clothes twice a year. In October for the fall and winter, I pull out all the winter clothes and, put all the summer clothes away. And the summer clothes always take up less space because, of course, it's like thinner t-shirts and stuff like that. So the winter clothes are also a little bit of a factor because you got like bulky sweaters and stuff. So that's always going to be a consideration. But, in October, I bring out the winter clothes, and then in April, May, when it starts to get warm, like it has been, I pull out the summer clothes. And again, I did a nice comb through, and this time I did probably have about 12 to 15 pieces, which is a lot for me. Again, I normally only have to donate about 1 to 3. And I really did get honest with it. I like to say, okay, has it been more than 2 years since I've worn this? Has it been more than 2 Aprils and more than 2 Octobers? And why aren't I wearing it? And a lot of the factors are what we talk about on this channel. Maybe I've gained weight and it doesn't fit well anymore. If it's tight, if it's tugging, if it's rubbing, if it's if it's not the right color, it just if it's itchy, or if it's got a tag in a funny place. And again, I had one shirt that the sleeves were just tight around my arms, and they had always been tight around my arms. And it's like, okay, I'm not reaching for this because it constricts me and I don't feel comfortable in it. Let me go ahead and let me pass it on to see if it would make someone else happy. And then, of course, just like we're all human, there are definitely pieces that I bought on impulse. They were more of a fashion thing. It was more of an impulse buy. And you'll see it again in a minute. You can do that at the thrift store too. You can just say, oh, that's so cute. Let me get it. Let me go ahead and pick it up. But I had one good paper grocery bag of donations, and I did decide to go ahead and donate it. There were a few pieces that were really nice, and I looked up online. I did put one article that I think was really special up for sale, online. But the rest of it, I could kind of see it was going for like $10 to $12, on eBay, Mercari. And, I thought, okay, let me just, let me donate it to the thrift store. The thrift store I go to is always hopping. And it's funny, they know me there. When I come in with a bag, I must bring them really quality clothes, because when the guy sees me come in, he gives me a 20% discount, because he's like, apparently I give him good stuff. It resells well. So he's like, here, the next time you come in, you get a discount for always being a good donation person. And not to knock it, but I don't have a whole lot of fast fashion in my wardrobe, so it's good quality pieces. So that was a good purge, and it felt good to do. And my closet is still pretty full, but it's a little bit more free, than it was. And so that felt good. But one thing that I had mentioned in the last video about the supply chain of things, how things go into the circuit. And it's funny, speaking of that thrift store, it's always a happening thrift store. It's a really popular place. I go there on a Friday night or a Saturday night, and there are a lot of people there. It's like the cool place to go. And they have nice quality things. And it just got me thinking, I had mentioned that I was going on a tour for a place called Helpsy. And what Helpsy is it's one of those donation receptacles receptacles, it's funny. I had mentioned this to my cousin. My cousin was visiting and she saw one of those stands that you donate clothes, and she's like, "What's that?" And I was like, "Oh, it's a clothes donation receptacle." And she's like, "Oh, we don't have very many of those where I'm at." And it's funny. It got me thinking about how much I kind of take that for granted. A lot of times, if you live kind of farther away from a major city or farther away from a donation center, that's where a lot of clothes can end up in landfills or not put back into the cycle because there's really not a system to recycle it. And Helpsy is a service that does that. Just like you see the Goodwill receptacles, it is specifically for clothes and textiles. But what was nice about it is that this tour was one of their first warehouses. It's one of their storage facilities. And the good thing about warehouses is that, you've seen how overflowed those receptacles can get. Sometimes people, donate too much, and you don't, just like the supply chain, you don't really know who's picking it up or how often they're picking it up. And Helpsy actually gave a presentation about how their system works. They empty out the receptacles like twice a day, and they're on a very consistent cycle with it. And then any overflow goes to their new donation center. And then what they can do is they can bale it, and then it does. Some of the textiles do go to a recycling center in New York. So it was a wonderful tour, and my friend Lisa, she was so sweet. She let me attend the presentation, and it was just so nice to see everything. And that just got me thinking again, if you are a thrift store or a secondhand retailer, those kind of facilities are very important because, having a way to collect it is part of the cycle. It's how we keep the clothes in a loop. And one other thing that was really great is that they gave out T-shirts that had the name of Helpsy on it, and they did use what we call dead stock, which is, I mentioned, they're blank T-shirts that would normally either get burned or thrown into a landfill. They'd be disposed of if they couldn't be used. And here you are, they're perfectly good T-shirts. They went through and they found the blank T-shirts, and they went ahead and printed it up, and I got a beautiful gray one that is 100% cotton. So I had mentioned Kathleen Illustrated has a Thrift gremlin t-shirt, and she was kind of doing the same thing. She was using either dead stock blanks or purchasing dead stock that would normally not be so you keep it in the circle. I really want one of those T-shirts. They've been selling out. My only apprehension is that it looks like it's kind of tie-dyed, and I want to make sure that it's its color stay, that it doesn't bleed. I'm sure it doesn't. I'm sure it's fixed, but the blue one with the red lettering looks really cute, and but that's the importance of some of these services like Helpsy, is that it helps keep what is already produced in the circle, and as we move forward with supply chain issues or tariffs or things like that, that's going to become really important. How do you use what you already have? Now, in the name of paring down, I'll go ahead and post a few other videos. It's funny how really, I don't know if it's just me. I just watch all the videos that talk about thrifting, and because thrifting is a cool way to shop. It's just a cool way to shop, and you can see the beauty in something that was pre-owned and pre-loved, and you really use your creativity and use your imagination on how that item can be used again. And and it's funny, I just don't understand, there's a stigma associated with thrifting. People make it seem like it's so dirty. And again, the thrift store I go to is happening on a Friday night. It's like it's got more people in there than, you know, the retail discount clothing stores, and they have really quality stuff. And it was funny, I actually ended up going into that thrift store 3 times over the course of 2 days. The first time was on Friday night when I brought in my bag of donations, and it was crazy, and I'm kicking myself. When I went in there, they had a Coach bag. They had a square leather Coach bag for like $29.99, and I was debating it, and I was like, should I get it? It's really nice. And it's one of those things, you definitely see people who go in there and they'll buy up all the nice purses to resell. You know, they'll buy the $30 Coach bag just to resell it for $150 on eBay. And I'm not all about that. I believe that if you see something like that, sometimes if it's not meant to be for you, leave it for someone who will really enjoy it. So I was kicking myself because I went in on Friday night and I saw the bag and I didn't get it. I thought, okay, you know, I've got enough nice purses. Let me leave it for someone else. And then it stayed on my mind. And the next day I went back and just out of curiosity, I was like, is it still there? And it was a Saturday morning, and nope. It was long gone, and I hope someone didn't just buy it to resell it, because that really undermines the purpose of, you know, the cool thrift store. But I hope it went to a happy home for someone to appreciate it. But when I went in on Saturday, it really got me thinking about, you know, secondhand selling as a marketplace, as a business. And I see the owners of the thrift store in there all the time. And it really is difficult, because you want to take in quality inventory, and we talk about supply chains. You want to take in quality inventory, and you want to make sure it sells. And one thing about this thrift store is they don't really take returns. They accept returns if it doesn't fit, but what they do is they encourage that you get kind of a store credit for something new, and if it's under $5, then they'll, you know, credit you back. So it's not really like you can go in there and buy a bunch of clothes and then wear it once and then come back and return it all. It doesn't work that way, and it shouldn't work that way, because this, you know, in order for it to be lucrative for the business owners, that's how they have to do it. And it's not like a normal business where you just, you know, you have a stock of 50 shirts that just aren't selling real well, and you can, you know, offset that with the jeans or something else. You know, it's really difficult, and it just got me thinking about that. And, you know, talking to the owner, I was being a real pain in the butt this weekend, because I went in and I wanted to find some good shorts for summer, and I did. I got into the circle that we all do. You know, it's a dopamine hit when you buy something new, and especially when you get it for a good deal. And I saw these cute pair of Adidas pants that were gray with magenta stripes, and I thought, oh, that would be great. You know, it's only $12. Let me buy them. And I bought a pair of shorts, and then I got it home and it just didn't fit right. The pants were too long and so forth. And so that poor owner saw me probably about 3 times. And what made me feel bad is that the owner is kind of the manager. So in order to do a refund, he has to come out to do it. And I noticed, you know, I had to wait a little while for him to come out, and I didn't realize that he was just coming back from his lunch break. And I was like, oh crap, here I am, you know, at the thrift store 3 times in one weekend, and I'm taking this poor man off his lunch break. But that's, you know, it's kind of a good thing that you have that kind of business for a secondhand store, but it also drove home the fact that it is difficult. It is difficult to resell previously owned things, and that's really what we should be doing. We have way too much production of clothes, and one thing, so the goal of this video is, and I know I've been kind of a talking head rambling, is that I advise there's something enlightening about going to the thrift store and looking at the clothes and kind of applying these spring cleaning rules to it. Like, you know, when you go to the thrift store, you can kind of have a wish list for what you're looking for. A lot of times you can be pleasantly surprised by something you didn't expect to find. And when, you know, I always have my kind of checklist. You know, I think about the cut of it, I think about the shape of my body, I think about the color of the garment, I think about my color chart. Does like, I know for a fact beige does not look good on me. Saw a bunch of beige shorts, I hold it up, it makes me look sick. So it's like not getting those because it's the wrong color. You can kind of hold it up. There's a good a tip that I had learned from one of the videos here. Who is it? Alyssa Bell Tempo. One thing that's good, especially if you have a thrift store that doesn't really have fitting rooms, one thing that you can do is if you wear kind of like a skirt and then under it some bike shorts, kind of like, you know, that makes it easy for you to kind of pull on or try on things, you know, and as you know, if you have on like a tank top where you can kind of, you know, throw a shirt on over or try the jacket on or try the shorts on under the skirt just to see how it would fit. Because it's amazing, you know, and the other side of it is, you know, it's a donation to the thrift store. It could be because it wasn't a good fit and that's why it got donated. But, you know, then again, there's a lot of gems, you know, that are there. A few other things I look for is I do love to look at the material. I always talk about natural fabrics, you know, cotton, linen, silk, hemp, and wool. And especially for summer, cotton and linen shorts are great if they're 100%. The other thing is I look for dye transfer if it's a darker color garment like navy or black. If you look at the wash tag, like a lot of times the tag is kind of white in color. If the tag looks like it's discolored, if it looks like it's, you know, basically it could be that the dyeing of the garment could be bleeding. So that's another reason why it might have ended up at the thrift store is if, you know, the other thing is sometimes you might see a tag inside the garment that says, you know, it discloses that. It'll say something like, you know, the dye used to dye this batch can transfer to other garments. And a lot of times that's a deal breaker for me because, you know, it's like if something's just going to bleed or transfer in a watch, you don't want to deal with that. It would be a lot of high maintenance. And that's another thing as well, is if you look at the garment and think, okay, is it gonna snag on things? Is it gonna tangle in things? Is it gonna be hard to hang up in the closet? Do I have to hand wash it or dry clean it? All of those are considerations when you're looking for things at the thrift store. But you know, one thing Christina Mikas also says is that, you know, one of the purposes of spring cleaning is to make space, and maybe you can enjoy having that space in your closet and not be real quick to fill it back up again. You know, I pared down on books and I got back into a reasonable place, but I don't have a whole lot of wiggle room. So it's not like I can, you know, go out and buy a bunch more and replace it, especially now that I've just, you know, kind of done it. But it did feel really good. And that's the purpose of spring, is feeling like, okay, you know, make room for something new. And again, I entreat you to, if you do find it where you are at like a thrift store or a secondhand store or a vintage store, I invite you to look at the clothes there and think about how did they get there, right? And then think about all of the new things we produce and how those new things end up at the thrift store, right? It's kind of like, again, it's like the spring purge leads into the recycling of things. And I think it's good to be honest about that. I personally feel like the thrift store is a fun place to be, but it's always good to think about the cycle of things, because you look at a cool, you know, I was looking at a cool shirt at the thrift store and thinking, wow, you know, how many seasons ago when was that hanging on, a mannequin in the front window of a fashion store, right? How many years ago? How long has it been before it was just donated and dropped off, right? And how can you give it a second life? But it is kind of being honest about how we get there, how we end up with all of this surplus. And it's not a bad thing, but it's also thinking about like our habits and how things end up needing to be purged in the first place. So and again, and I'm sorry, it's kind of rambling, but those are just kind of the spring ideas that I have, when things go dormant in the winter and spring back up in the springtime. Just like we said, it's kind of the cycle of things, and you want to be honest as to how it ends up, where it ends up, and what we can do to make sure that it stays in a loop. But I thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this wasn't too boring. That's just kind of been what's on my mind and what's been kind of going on. It's been a nice kind of foray into spring, and it's been enjoyable. And I promise you, next video we'll do another fashion video. I know everybody loves those, and I have had ideas percolating, and all of these ideas can be fulfilled at the thrift store. And I actually recently found a few gems, to stock up for summer. And again, it will be kind of more of a subdued kind of summer, but very functional and very stylish at the same time. So I promise you, next video it'll be that. If you like what you see here on this channel, I would be very honored if you would like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.